The sun hadn't fully risen yet. The terminal was calm, cold, and silent. In the middle of that huge airport in Europe, a man walked alone, a backpack on his shoulder, a cap on his head, unhurried. Nothing about him drew attention. No expensive suit, no security guards, no badge on his chest, just another African man traveling. But that man was not ordinary. He was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, and no one there had any idea. He always traveled like that, simple, discreet, away from the spotlight. He believed in it, being with the people, feeling the people, being like the people. His mission on European soil had ended. Delicate meetings, discussions about mining, security, African sovereignty. And now all he wanted was to go back home. He arrived at the gate and calmly handed his diplomatic passport to the attendant. Her name was Sophie. She looked at him, then at the passport, then back at him again, furrowing her brow, tightening her expression. In her mind, something didn't add up because to her, a president didn't look like that. And that's when it all started. Sophie held the passport with 2 fingers as if it were fragile or fake. She turned it one way, then the other, read the name, and gave a slight smirk. "President?" she asked with a mocking tone. "You're a president?" Traoré replied calmly. "Yes, from Burkina Faso." She let out a short laugh. She didn't answer. She simply picked up the radio from the EO. "Counter. Security to Gate E, suspicious document," she called. Meanwhile, Traoré stood there without reacting, not even getting irritated. He picked up his phone, sat on one of the benches, and waited. But Sophie kept staring at him as if she were looking at an imposter. To her, the problem wasn't the passport. It was the face, the skin color, the simple way of dressing. Because in her mind, an African president traveled by private jet, wore a suit, arrived with bodyguards. And there he was, with none of that, only dignity, and she couldn't recognize it. 2 minutes later, heavy footsteps echoed across the terminal floor. Paul Gueux, the head of airport security, arrived, a former military man, French, rough. Beside him was Julien, a young agent, visibly more cautious. Paul didn't even greet anyone. He went straight to the point. "Document," he said. Traoré extended his diplomatic passport for the 3rd time. Paul grabbed it, gave it a quick look, and snorted. "This is fake, right?" Traoré responded firmly but calmly. "I am the president of Burkina Faso." Paul laughed loudly. "President, and I'm the Pope. Get up now." Sophie crossed her arms. "I warned you." It was strange from the beginning. Julien watched everything silently, but Paul had already made up his mind. In his head, it was a joke. A black man, alone, claiming to be a president. Impossible. "You're leaving now," said Paul, "before I remove you my way." "On what grounds?" Traoré asked. "On the grounds of my job. This isn't a place for theatre." And so the embarrassment turned into humiliation. The truth became a reason for laughter. Paul stepped forward, lowered his voice but not his arrogance. "Last chance, get up and leave before I remove you by force." Traoré remained seated, didn't raise his voice, only looked him in the eyes. "I committed no crime. I have a ticket and a diplomatic passport. I am where I am supposed to be." Sophie exploded. "You're impersonating a head of state. That's serious." "I am a head of state," Traoré answered. "Sure," Paul mocked, "and I'm the King of France. Get up." Without waiting for a reply, he made a brusque gesture toward Julien. Julien hesitated. "Chief, maybe we should call the supervisor." Paul cut him off. "Shut up and do as I say." Julien grabbed Traoré's arm, trying to pull him up. At that moment, the backpack slipped and Traoré lost balance, falling sideways, knees hitting the floor. Some passengers looked. 1 or 2 raised their phones. Sophie looked around and whispered to Paul, "Do it quickly, before too many people film." Traoré got up, grabbed his backpack and looked at the 2 men, his voice firm but without shouting. "You have no idea what you're doing." Paul responded with disdain. "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm cleaning up this airport." And he pointed toward the exit. "Get out of here." Traoré obeyed, took a few steps, then, before crossing the door, turned back, looked at Paul, then at Sophie, and said only, "You will remember this moment." And he disappeared into the crowd, expelled as if he were nobody, yet carrying the weight of a nation on his shoulders. Outside, the cold cut across his face. Traoré walked to the taxi stand without saying a word. One of his bodyguards, Mamadou, had watched everything from afar, disguised among the passengers. He approached, visibly irritated. "President, do you want me to activate the team? This can't go unpunished." Traoré simply shook his head. "Not yet. But you fell to the ground. They trampled your honor." Traoré stopped, turned slowly to Mamadou. "They didn't trample on me. They trampled on something they don't understand. And that is what will bring them down." Silence. The car arrived. They got in. As the driver moved along the road, Traoré stared out the window, silent, firm, without anger on his face. But in his eyes, it was already written. They had dug their own downfall. The next morning, someone posted the video, a quick cut, no editing, only the raw truth. The president of Burkina Faso being pushed, accused, humiliated on the ground, while calmly saying, "You don't know the mistake you've made." The video reached 1 million views in less than an hour, then 10 million, then 50. Respect Africa. No Ghana stand with Traoré. Burkina Faso is not a colony. The hashtags exploded. African influencers spoke out. Diplomats stayed silent. Journalists tried to downplay it, but it was too late. The world now knew, and the question was in the air. Who were they to treat a president like he was nothing? Burkina Faso responded first, then Mali, then Congo, then the diaspora, an outrage that turned into a chain reaction that turned into a tsunami. 3 days later, the airport looked the same flights, same voices, but the atmosphere was different. In the lobby, discreet agents of Burkinabe diplomacy circulated silently. With them, representatives of the African embassy and local authorities. Nobody knew exactly what was about to happen, but everyone felt the weight in the air. In human resources, Sophie waited. In security, Paul waited too. Both thought it would be just a warning, a slap on the wrist, nothing serious. Sophie fixed her makeup before entering. Paul chewed gum arrogantly, but in the room they were received by 2 men in dark suits. One of them placed a folder on the table, slowly opened it and read out loud, "Abuse of authority against a head of state. Violation of diplomatic protocols. Serious discrimination on international grounds." Sophie widened her eyes, straightened herself in the chair. "You are officially suspended, and from this moment, detained for investigation." "Detained?" Sophie shouted. "This is crazy!" Paul stood up. The officer didn't blink. "Crazy? That's what you did." Civil guards entered. Sophie tried to argue, "But we didn't know who he was." "That's exactly the problem," the agent replied. "You shouldn't need to know to respect someone." And that day, those who thought they ruled were led out under the eyes of those who never forget humiliation. Hours later, live from Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré appeared before the cameras. No jacket, no prepared speech, just him, firm, calm, unbreakable. "I was not disrespected by mistake," he said. "I was disrespected because for many it is still hard to accept that a man like me can lead a country." Pause. Absolute silence. They asked me why I didn't react, why I didn't shout, why I didn't order their arrest right there. He stared directly into the camera. Because it was not just about me. It was about something bigger, about how they treat our people, about how they still see us as invisible. Another pause. "But I guarantee you, this Africa is not the same anymore. We will not bow our heads, and those who do not recognize us will respect us through the strength of the truth." The whole world heard. But Africa felt it. Sophie and Paul left the airport in handcuffs. No uniform, no badge, just the sound of agents' boots on the floor and the embarrassing silence of the witnesses. Some employees watched from behind windows, others filmed secretly. No one said anything. No one defended them. The arrogance that made them feel untouchable had vanished. Sophie cried, trying to explain, I didn't know, I swear. It was just a misunderstanding. Paul said nothing, head down, face hard, as if he had finally understood, too late, the magnitude of his mistake. They were taken for interrogation. There, they were no longer superiors. There, they were nobody. And the whole world saw it. Days later, the case became a symbol. Murals began appearing on walls in Ouagadougou, Dakar, Bamako. They portrayed Ibrahim Traoré with the phrase, "They tried to bring down one man, but they lifted a continent." Air France released a cold statement, saying they regretted the incident. But it was too late. Burkina Faso suspended flights from the airline indefinitely. African organizations demanded answers, and the videos kept circulating. Sophie and Paul awaited trial. No privileges, no excuses, no ground to stand on. Meanwhile, Traoré returned to his routine. Meetings, projects, schools, soldiers, people. But wherever he went, young people stopped him. They wanted to shake his hand, to take pictures, to say, "Thank you for..." Not shouting, for not hitting, for winning the right way. And he just smiled, because at that airport, when they threw him to the ground, they didn't realize they were kneeling before a king. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is essential to help more people discover stories like this one, and many others we share here.